Fired Google engineer James Damore filed a class action lawsuit against the company, claiming the company discriminates against males, people of the Caucasian race, and those with conservative viewpoints. Damore was famously terminated after he issued a memo that said that women may not be advancing through the management ranks at Google because of genetic differences.
San Diego State University business ethics lecturer Dan Eaton is joining us on the KOGO News Live line. Now, what's interesting, Dan, is he's not actually challenging his termination, is he?
That was a fascinating thing, LaDona, as I was reading through the 62-page complaint early this morning. What he is challenging is the culture, which he says resulted in Google taking adverse actions against conservative and conservative white males by creating an environment where people felt free to call conservatives names and deny them promotional opportunities and so forth. Because it's being brought as a class action, presumably Mr. Damore's lawyers felt that he couldn't establish a broad class of people because a lot of people who are conservative are still working there and weren't fired. There would be too many individual issues. So they had to go for this broader issue of not protecting them from this hostile environment against conservatives and white males.
Okay, now what he said about women and the genetic differences in light of the Me Too movement, was his memo just a matter of bad timing?
Well, it's very interesting because what he is saying, Ted, is essentially that this was all about his political viewpoints. In the complaint, he actually says that Google has a political agenda, which is a liberal agenda. It's interesting whether a company can have a liberal point of view. But what he was fired for, to your point, Ted, was in advancing harmful gender stereotypes. And the question is whether that's going to be enough for Google to avoid this assault, essentially, by conservative white males on their cultures for engaging in activities that they say suppress their political activities and fired against them or took action against them because of their race and their gender.
Now, Dan, I mean, companies fire people all the time for Facebook posts, for things that get the companies in hot water with potential customers.
And yet, LaDona, you have to be careful about why you're actually firing them. That's why this statement about advancing gender stereotypes was so important. Because if they had said, we fired you because you're just too damn conservative and it's not a cultural fit, that would have been illegal under California law, as well as, of course, they certainly couldn't fire him for being a conservative white male or a white male at all. These are all protected. But you still can be fired for saying bad things, especially if you're a private employer. There is no First Amendment protection with respect to private employment, which is what your point was, LaDona.
All right, so do his thoughts in regarding the women reflect a corporate mindset that has kept American women out of the upper echelons of upper management for decades?
Well, that's an interesting question, and it's a debatable question, and it's one he raised, but that's really not the point of his lawsuit, because the point of his lawsuit is, even if I hold these views, and actually his views were, he says in this very lengthy memo he wrote back in August, or back in this summer, broadly attributed to a wide range of sources, that really is sort of beside the point. The point is that whether he holds those views or not, he couldn't be punished for those views, and he couldn't be punished for pressing those views, nor could any other conservative. And some of the specific things that he addresses with respect to internal comments by other Google employees are very, very inflammatory with respect to conservatives. They attacked him personally and other conservatives personally. It'll be interesting to see how a court views those.
Now, Damore also, I mean, I remember part of the issue was that he sent this memo company-wide, and he's not really one of the people who should be sending a company-wide memo.
Well, except they have all these listservs. LaDona, a lot of companies have these internal listservs, particularly a company as wide and broad as Google is, and he was sending it internally. He just kept sending it to broader and broader groups, and eventually it got leaked out to BuzzFeed, which ended up publishing, and then, of course, it went viral worldwide. So as far as whether he had the authority to send this, he certainly had the authority to post it somewhere, but ultimately it was leaked, and that's ultimately what led him into hot water.
All right, Dan, thank you so much. That is San Diego State University business ethics lecturer Dan Eaton on the KOGO News Live.